You know, before recently, I would have told you the person most likely to be Trump's running mate would have been South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. Now, that has changed for reasons that you're probably familiar with. And those are two things she revealed in her upcoming book, which is strange to hurt yourself this much with your own book, because normally a book in a moment like this is supposed to help you get to a higher position of power and bolster your message and you as a candidate. It did the opposite for Kristi Noem. And that relates to her telling this story about killing her dog Cricket and telling a story about meeting Kim Jong-un. Now, she never met Kim Jong-un, so that is a little problematic. And when she gets called out on it, she just really struggles to defend putting that anecdote in the book. Now, before playing this clip, you might think, well, maybe just a ghostwriter put that in there, got confused about something that she had said, and so they put it in there and she missed it. Yeah, she read her own audiobook, so she knew that was in there. She read over it out loud and decided to keep it in there until she was called out. Now she's saying she's going to remove that anecdote, but she won't explicitly say that it was a false story or a lie. And watching her try to wiggle out of this is brutal. And I can tell you, her chances of being Trump's VP pick have completely gone up into flames. And that is unfortunate for her. While we watch this, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel just by clicking the subscribe button.
Let's talk first. We want to talk about a lot of the topics that you address in the book, but the book is called No Going Back, but it sounds like the publisher Center Street is going back on a couple of the details in the book.
Oh, I don't believe so.
Specifically, when you write in the book, I remember when I met with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, I'm sure he underestimated me. That, as I understand, is now being removed from the book at your request.
Yes, when I became aware of that, we changed the content, and the future editions will be adjusted. And, I appreciate that. I've met with many, many world leaders. I've traveled around the world. I should not have put that anecdote in the book, and at my request, they have removed it.
That specific meeting didn't happen?
I'm saying that I'm not talking about that meeting. I'm not talking about my meetings with world leaders.
But you
there's
do
some
talk
that are
about
in the
meetings
book.
with world leaders.
There's some that are in the book, and then there's some that's not in the book. Many of them.
Do you know, when in some action movie, someone's on the phone and their captors are around and they're trying to indicate to the person they're on the phone with or law enforcement that they're in trouble, but they can't say something that will indicate to their captors that they're in trouble. So they have to go, the pizza's in the oven, but it's not hot. And there's no pepperoni as some code. It sounds like she's doing something like that. Okay, so the story didn't happen. That's why you're taking out the book. I've met with a lot of world leaders, and I wasn't going to put in stories about world leaders, except for the ones that I did. But we took out that one. Oh, okay, because it wasn't accurate. No, I'm not saying it wasn't accurate. You met with Kim Jong-un. I met with a lot of world leaders, and the pizza is out of the oven.
Why are there two specific mentions of meeting Kim Jong-un and talking about him, and a specific memory? I'm sure he underestimated me, having no clue about my experience staring down little tyrants. Did you tell your ghostwriter to write that?
I specifically have worked on policy for over 30 years. And over that time, I have traveled around the world. And
another riddle. She worked on policy for many years, but she never did interact with a deer.
I have met with leaders around the world. And that anecdote, I've asked them to change the content, and it will be removed.
It's a simple question. Did you or did you not meet with Kim Jong-un?
That's the answer that I have for you, is that it will be adjusted. And as soon as I became aware of it, that content.
Yeah, and good for the journalist there for snapping at her a little bit and saying it's a simple, please just answer the question. Because sometimes I think viewers, apparently that's why politicians do this, viewers kind of get hearing what the person's saying, go, oh, okay, well, they're answering. It sounds like they're confidently answering the question. Okay, I'm sort of missing what the answer is, but surely they're being honest. And so clearly saying to the audience, or for the audience's sake, this answer is not at all answering the question. And I think it's the sign of, well, a dishonest person for sure, but also someone who's not ready for prime time whenever you can't get off your script. Because clearly they practice, I was made aware of that section and I've asked for that content to be removed. while it's also important to remember that I met with a lot of world leaders during my time working on policy, but then she can't really go beyond that. So then when a more particular specific questions asked, she just goes back to it and it sounds very weird, and she's sort of on a loop. And that continued, or actually the clip I just played for you was later, but earlier on Face the Nation, also on CBS, she got asked about this and it didn't go much better.
So you write about lessons learned in leadership, and you bring up some specific incidents I want to ask you about. You talk about meeting some world leaders, and one specific one, quote, "I remember when I met with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, I'm sure he underestimated me, having no clue about my experience staring down little tyrants. I've been a children's pastor after all." Did you meet Kim Jong-un?
Well, you know, as soon as this was brought to my attention, I certainly made some changes and looked at this passage. And I've met with many, many world leaders. I've traveled around the world. As soon as it was brought to my attention, we went forward and have made some edits. So I'm glad that this book is being released in a couple of days, and that those edits will be in place, and that people will have the updated version.
So you did not meet with Kim Jong-un. That's what you're saying.
You know, I've met with many, many world leaders. I've traveled around the world. I think I've talked extensively in this book about my time serving in Congress, my time as governor, before governor, some of the travels that I've had.
This is just embarrassing. I feel like it would be less politically damaging to go, yeah, I told the ghostwriter a bunch of stories, and I don't want to, cast blame, but either I mistold a story or he got one of my stories mixed up and we made a mistake. So we're taking it out. And that story is not accurate. Let me be clear, right? But instead it has to be this bizarre riddle where she's saying a bunch of things that don't answer the question. And anytime you see a question asked and an answer that does not at all properly and clearly deliver a response to that question and the specifics of that question, the person's being dishonest. But again, if she's willing to be dishonest, why not just say your ghostwriter made it up? Just kidding. Why not say that you and your ghostwriter made a mistake? I don't know who made the mistake, but somebody did. And it's inaccurate. But she won't admit that it's inaccurate, which is the part that I'm really struggling with.
I'm not going to talk about my specific meetings with world leaders. I'm just not going to do that. This anecdote
except for the ones that you did share.
Shouldn't have been in the book, and as soon as it was brought to my attention, I made sure that was adjusted. So the book is not released until Tuesday, and so we're doing all that we can to make sure that those changes are made, and I'm going to continue to focus on what this book is and the blueprint that it lays out for the American citizen, on all of the things in the background and stories of my life, but also what I think that needs to be identified in politics and what's broken today. I talk about how broken the money game is, how broken it is that we've got consultants that are getting rich off of elected officials, and then how fake some elected politicians are. Every single
like when they go on national TV and refuse to answer a question.
Person in this country wants someone in elected office that's a human being, that doesn't say they're perfect. I take responsibility for that being in the book, and as soon as it was brought to my attention, I asked for it to be changed. So
We've heard that about 1 billion times. We know you did that, okay?
I'm glad that the release date is in a couple of days.
Okay, I can't hear anymore. So in reality, when she had it brought to her attention that people noticed that she made up a story about Kim Jong-un, then she wanted to change the story. But she should be careful. Don't be talking negatively about Kim Jong-un, okay? That might upset Donald Trump. They did write love letters to one another after all. Now, this bizarre scripted type of response did remind me of the iconic Kristi takedown of Marco Rubio. And right now, Marco Rubio is also in the running to be Trump's VP pick. Maybe it got more likely now that Kristi Noem is out of it. So it was really nice because it's rarely explicitly called out to see back during the 2016 presidential primary in the Republican Party, Kristi call out this classic politician answer that they can't get away from. You can't, once you've practiced with your team a script and Kristi Noem and her team practice how they're going to get out of this politically, they're failing hard, but they clearly practiced with her, rehearsed what she was going to say on TV because she's saying the same thing over and over again. But here, Kristi called the fact that Marco Rubio was doing a similar thing during this debate.
Fight to the stage. I like Marco Rubio, and he's a smart person and a good guy, but he simply does not have the experience to be president of the United States and make these decisions. We've watched it happen, everybody. For the last 7 years, the people of New Hampshire are smart. Do not make the same mistake again.
I think the experience is not just what you did, but how it worked out. Under Chris Christie's governorship of New Jersey, they've been downgraded 9 times in their credit rating. This country already has a debt problem. We don't need to add to it by electing someone who has experience at running up and destroying the credit rating of his state. But I would add this: let's dispel with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. He is trying to change this country. He wants America to become more like the rest of the world. We don't want to be like the rest of the world. We want to be the United States of America. And when I'm elected president, this will become once again the single greatest nation in the history of the world, not the disaster Barack Obama has imposed upon us.
You see, everybody, I want the people at home to think about this. That's what Washington, D.C. does. The drive-by shot at the beginning with incorrect and incomplete information, and then the memorized 25-second speech that is exactly what his advisors gave him. See, Marco, the thing is this. When you're president of the United States, when you're a governor of a state, the memorized 30-second speech where you talk about how great America is at the end of it doesn't solve one problem for one person. They expect you to plow the snow. They expect you to get the schools open. And when the worst natural disaster in your state's history hits you, they expect you to rebuild their state, which is what I've done. None of that stuff happens on the floor of the United States Senate. It's a fine job. I'm glad you ran for it, but it does not prepare you for president of the United States.
Chris, your state got hit by a massive snowstorm 2 weeks ago. You didn't even want to go back. They had to shame you into going back. And then you stayed there for 36 hours, and then he left and came back to campaign. See, those are the facts. Here's the bottom line. This notion that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing is just not true.
There it is.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
The memorized 25-second speech.
Well, that's the reason why this campaign...
You know what the shame is, Marco? The shame is that you would actually criticize somebody for showing up to work, plowing the streets, getting the trains run back on time, when you've never been responsible for that in your entire life.
Okay. Yeah, and I think the reason why that moment, first of all, went so viral, second of all, seemed to hurt Marco Rubio so much and has become sort of well known, is because of how much it resonates with a broader issue with a lot of people in politics, which is that sort of unable to get away from the script, unable to just have a normal human moment on something. And that's what I feel when I see that Kristi Noem moment or others, is the urge to just scream, be a normal person, just be a normal human being who admits your mistakes, who's not on a script, and just say, I'm sorry, we were trying to make myself look really good. I was spitting out a bunch of stories and we must have made a mistake. And I really do apologize. It's an inaccurate story, but let me tell you about some real stories. And then, okay, give your political answer then. But there's none of that genuine energy often, and instead it's this sort of insulting to the audience way of going about it, where you think the audience isn't smart enough and can't critically think enough to understand you're avoiding the question. We'll think, well, they're saying words, so, and it is an insult to people watching these interviews. And I was thinking, to the point of being a normal person, imagine if you tried that little number in an interpersonal interaction where your roommate or your spouse or something asks you to do the dishes, you agree to it, and then they get back. This has never happened to me, by the way, okay? This is just completely, I'm just making it up, all right? Not from experience at all. And then your response to them coming home and the dishes not being done after they explicitly asked you to were something like what Kristi Noem said. Well, interesting you to bring that up. Now that you've brought that to my attention, that there's dirty dishes, I'm going to be ameliorating that issue promptly. And then they confront you again. You said you were going to do this, but you didn't do it. But they're sitting there right now. I'm not asking if you can do it in the future. You were supposed to do them before. And your response is, you wanted me to clean the dishes with soap and water and then put them in the cupboards. And last I checked, there are dishes in the cupboards. So it would be rather upsetting. That's why it's so upsetting whenever politicians do it, but it's more typical, so it's not really surprising. And then I will say, more notably, the takeaway from this VP contemplation on the part of Trump is that so many of these candidates, to get even considered by Trump, to be his running mate, you have to say that you would have overturned the last election as vice president, which of course Mike Pence refused to do. And the fact that we're in a moment where that has to be a qualifier shows you how devastating the Republican Party has become. And another reason why we need to make sure that Trump, whoever he picks as his VP pick, is defeated soundly in this election. Not only do we have weird dog killing, dishonest people being considered, but also they are all dedicating themselves to violating the Constitution in service of Trump. Let me know what you thought of all that in the comments.